Both good and bad behavior can affect our life. Personality and behavior are important elements in society, especially involving human development. Many social problems occur because of negative personality and behavior. In the comment sections on social media, we often see that society blames the parents for their children's bad actions and personality. But are the parents responsible for their children's personalities? Assalamualaikum everyone. This video shall explain to you about behaviorism from both secular and the Islamic perspective. The phenomenon earlier is consistent with the theory of behaviorism, which believes that human actions are learned through interactions with the environment. And among the theories proposed, we have operant conditioning. Introduced by an American psychologist B.F. Skinner, operant conditioning refers to any behavior based on the environment and the consequences of their actions. This method proposed that behavior can be changed through reinforcement, either positive or negative, as well as through rewards and punishments. However, just like any other, this theory has its own limitations as well. So now let's take a look at the limitations. There are 4 key points I would like to highlight here in the limitations. 1. The focus on observable behavior. 2. The social context and environmental factors in which the behavior occurs. 3. The role of genetics. And 4. Its reliance on extrinsic motivation. So let's take a look at it one by one. Operant conditioning focuses solely on observable behavior and neglects the role of internal mental processes. This means it negates the idea of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Skinner stated that behavior is shaped by the consequences that follow, and it is not necessary to understand the internal processes that occurs in the mind. However, cognitive psychologists strongly reject this notion because cognitive processes are also crucial in understanding behavior. For example, it is not sufficient to only reward a child for performing well in school without understanding how the child perceives and processes the information taught in class. Therefore, operant conditioning overlooks the role of cognitive processes in shaping behavior. Moving on, operant conditioning fails to consider the social context and environmental factors in which the behavior occurs. Recent research suggests that environmental factors such as parenting and cultural norms play a significant role in shaping behavior. The rewards and punishments that reinforce behavior can vary across different contexts, depending on cultural norms and social expectations. For example, a behavior that is rewarded in one culture may be punished in another. Therefore, operant conditioning is limited in explaining behavior in diverse social contexts. Next, operant conditioning neglects the role of genetics in influencing behaviors. For example, some people may be genetically predisposed to developing certain disorders such as autism, which cannot be modified through operant conditioning alone. Plus, it overlooks the fact that there are innate behaviors that are not learned but are rather genetically programmed. For instance, newborns have innate reflexes such as sucking and grasping, which are not learned through conditioning. Lastly, operant conditioning relies on extrinsic motivation, which uses external rewards and punishments to modify behavior. While this can be effective in the short term, it may not lead to lasting behavior change. Intrinsic motivation, or the internal desire to engage in a behavior, is often more effective for creating sustained behavior change. Operant conditioning does not account for the complex interplay between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which is essential for understanding behavior change. While behavior is an important aspect of psychology, it is not the only one. The human experience is complex and multifaceted, and Skinner's approach ignores the elements of human cognition, genetics, environmental factors, and human motivation. Now, what does Islam say about these limitations? As opposed to behaviorism, Islam acknowledges the dual nature of man, which are the body and spirit. The body dimensions of man refers to the physical aspect, or as behaviorism calls it, the observable part. The spiritual dimension of man includes the spirit, heart, soul, and intellect. To only consider one dimension of a man would be very dismissive and would not explain man's behavior holistically. Contradicting to Skinner's operant conditioning, Islam greatly emphasizes the importance of social and environmental influences on one's behavior. A hadith mentioned that every child is born according to his true nature, which is fitrah. It is the parents who shape them to become a Jew, or a Christian, or a Magian. Here we can see that one's behavior is not only affected by the consequences of the action, but is also based on the social and environmental factors. Islam also recognizes the role of genetics in influencing behavior. One's genetics form one's character, and these characters will lead to how one behaves in their daily life. Islam also reminds its followers to be mindful of the selection of spouses in ensuring good lineage. This is because parents with good characters would ensure a good upbringing for the children. Do keep in mind that Islam does not wholly reject the notions brought forward by behaviorism. One idea of behaviorism that can be relevantized to Islamic teachings is reward and punishment. As behaviorism suggests, Islam uses rewards and punishments to encourage people to do good deeds and deter people from committing immoral acts. Allah promises bountiful rewards for Muslims when they do good deeds and harsh punishments if they sin. However, Muslims can repent and ask forgiveness for Allah SWT if they ended up transgressing His orders. Skinner'S behaviorism may propose contradicting ideas to Islamic teachings. However, we should always know when to reject, accept, or modify ideas to suit our belief system.
As you can see, the Islamic perspective is related to the spiritual relationship between humans and God, while Skinner'S behaviorism is very secular. Thus, it doesn't highlight the spiritual elements in determining their studies. The main difference between the Islamic perspective and the secular behaviorist perspective lies in their value. The Islamic perspective is balanced between the human nature of free will and determinism. Meanwhile, Skinner'S behaviorism states that human nature is very deterministic. What does it mean for human nature to be both free will and deterministic as suggested by Islam? First, let's look at the deterministic part. Islam taught its followers that most of the will and actions are already instilled in the heart by the Almighty. Therefore, it is only natural for man to submit to Allah, as it has been determined for him to do so. Not submitting to Allah will only lead to restlessness in the heart of man. Moving on to the free will side, in Islam, humans still have the freedom by themselves to choose if they want to commit an action or not. Taking the same example of submitting to Allah, despite that it is predetermined for men to do so, they still have the choice to do it or not. And that is why we can see some Muslims practicing their religion closely, such as performing the prayers on time, fasting, and paying zakah, while some, they don't. So, due to the granted free will, man will be responsible for every one of his actions. Furthermore, Islam highlights the role of the soul or iman in influencing human freedom of choice. If the person has good faith, then every action will be in accordance with his faith and vice versa. Allah has put man on a high pedestal as the best creation. A man shouldn't be simply reduced to an automaton as the possessed elements such as intellect, feelings, drives, and soul. A man was also noted to be the vicegerent of the world, and they have the responsibility to make their own right decision. Hence, Islam implies that man can be influenced by worldly factors, but he is not a determinist of it. Now, let's head over to the behaviorist value of human nature, which is determinism. Skinner proposed that humans act out their behavior or action because of their instinct, such as biological or physiological factor. Humans have no control over themselves and are only a product of the mechanism, meaning that, like a robot or a computer, when humans receive a specific stimuli, they will respond to said stimuli with a certain behavior. As behaviorism solely focuses on physical and observable behaviors, there is no spiritual aspect involved. Simply put, Skinner deduced man as a push-pull automaton, close to the 19th century notion of a machine. He said that man is a machine in the sense that he's a complex system behaving in a lawful ways, but the complexity is extraordinary. Therefore, for behaviorism, human behavior can be explained by the stimuli response model. After going through the key points of Skinner's behaviorism and comparing them with the Islamic perspective, we can now integrate both perspectives to form a new one. The mind plays a role in a human's daily life in making decisions before acting on something. Humans were granted aql by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to attain knowledge and make their own decisions. Growing up, humans are taught about morals of what is right and what is wrong, as well as the consequences of their actions. However, not everyone has lived their life abiding by the rules and regulations either set by the humans or the Almighty Himself. For example, it is known that the criminals will be punished for their crimes. Yet, the there are still many crimes going on in this world. Taking another example, some actions are known to be prohibited in Islam, such as smoking, skipping obligatory prayers, and many others. Yet, we find these to be regulated in our everyday lives as if it is a normal thing. This shows how knowing the consequences do not guarantee one's action, as there might be other variables that influence the action, such as motivation and temptation. Skinner's reinforcement theory suggests that behaviors are shaped by the consequences. Thus, a behavior can change through reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. On the other hand, Islamic teachings have taught us that humans will be either rewarded or punished for their sins for each of the actions as well. By integrating these two understandings, we could agree that human actions are indeed influenced by the possible consequences they might have. However, unlike Skinner's theory, which considers totally the effects itself, the Islamic perspective allows us to instill the concept of free will, which explains how humans can make their own choices despite knowing the consequences. Thus, looking from a new perspective, we suggest that Skinner's reinforcement theory will be taken as a reference to why consequences matter while taking into consideration of the human mind has its freedom of choice, which leads to unpredictable actions. In Islam, Quran has revealed the creation of heaven and hell, which is the place where all mankind will be divided and placed according to their deeds in the hereafter. Hence, every deed will be counted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and will be rewarded either with heaven or hell according to their action. This concept in Islam is parallel with the theory of Skinner, where consequences can shape behavior because every decision made by Muslims will remind them that they will be responsible for every action they made and consequences are waiting for them. Eventually, the thought of the consequences that they will face in the hereafter will shape the Muslims to be obedient and comply with every commandment of Allah because they do not want to face the difficulty afterwards. Therefore, this theory can be taken into a new perspective by instilling a part where the mind plays the role of making decisions before acting, and this will guide humankind in behaving or acting according to the one that will satisfy and please the Creator.